The steam rose thick in the communal showers of Naval Amphibious Base Coronado as Sarah Mitchell quickly rinsed the sand and sweat from another grueling day of training. She kept her head down, focusing on the hot water cascading over her shoulders, trying to ignore the whispered comments and barely concealed snickers from the other trainees around her. "Look at her trying to act tough," one voice muttered from across the shower room. "Bet she won't last another week." "My money's on 3 days," another replied with a harsh laugh. "This isn't summer camp, princess." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She had heard worse during her years in the military, and she knew that responding would only fuel their behavior. Instead, she finished washing quickly and wrapped herself in a towel, heading back to her bunk without making eye contact with anyone. The Naval Special Warfare Training Center was no place for the weak, and Sarah knew that every person in this facility had earned their right to be here through blood, sweat, and determination. What they didn't know was that she had too, in ways they couldn't imagine. 3 months ago, Sarah had received orders that would change everything. After years of classified operations and leadership roles that she couldn't discuss with anyone outside of her immediate command structure, she was being assigned to a new unit. The catch was that her cover required her to go through the standard training pipeline alongside the new recruits, without revealing her true identity or background. "You'll be Staff Sergeant Mitchell to them," her commanding officer had explained during their final briefing. "Nothing more, nothing less. Your real rank and experience stay classified until the mission parameters change." The mission was sensitive, involving potential security breaches within the training pipeline itself. Someone had been leaking information about SEAL training methods and schedules to unauthorized parties, and Command needed someone on the inside who could investigate without raising suspicion. Sarah had accepted the assignment without hesitation, even though she knew it would mean enduring weeks or possibly months of being treated as just another trainee struggling to prove herself worthy of the SEAL teams. Now, as she lay on her narrow bunk, listening to the continued comments from her bunkmates, she reminded herself why she was here. The investigation was more important than her pride, and every day she spent gathering intelligence was another day closer to identifying the security threat. "Hey, Mitchell," called out Martinez, one of the more vocal critics. "You better bring your A-game tomorrow. Instructor Johnson's going to put us through underwater demolition training, and I heard he loves to make the weak links crack under pressure." Sarah turned over and looked directly at Martinez for the first time since arriving at the base. "I'll be fine," she said simply. "Sure you will," Martinez replied with a smirk. "Just don't expect any of us to carry your weight when you can't keep up." The next morning brought the familiar sound of reveille at 0500 hours. Sarah was already awake. Having spent the night reviewing intelligence reports on her encrypted tablet while her bunkmates slept, she quickly secured the device and prepared for another day of training that would test not just her physical abilities, but her patience and determination to maintain her cover. The underwater demolition training took place in the base's deep water training facility, where recruits would learn to place and detonate explosive charges while holding their breath for extended periods. It was one of the most challenging aspects of SEAL training, requiring perfect timing, technical precision, and the ability to remain calm under extreme pressure. Instructor Johnson, a grizzled veteran with 20 years of special operations experience, stood before the group of trainees as they suited up in diving gear. "Today, you'll learn why we call ourselves Naval Special Warfare," he announced. "The ocean is our battlefield, and underwater demolition is one of our most critical skills. Some of you will excel, some of you will struggle, and some of you will wash out." His eyes swept across the group, lingering for a moment on Sarah. "The key to success underwater is not panic when things go wrong, because they will go wrong. Your equipment will malfunction, your air will run low, and your target will be more difficult to reach than you expected. The SEALs who survive and complete their missions are the ones who can think clearly and act decisively when everything around them is falling apart." The first exercise involved swimming to the bottom of the training pool, locating a simulated target, and attaching a practice charge within a specified time limit. Each trainee would be monitored for technique, speed, and adherence to safety protocols. Sarah watched as the first few trainees attempted the exercise. Some succeeded with varying degrees of skill, while others surfaced early, unable to complete the task within the time limit. Martinez completed his run successfully, surfacing with a confident grin and making a point of looking in Sarah's direction. When her turn came, Sarah approached the edge of the pool with calm confidence. She had performed similar exercises countless times during her actual SEAL training years ago, but now she had to be careful not to demonstrate skills that would be beyond what a typical trainee might possess. She took 3 deep breaths to oxygenate her blood, then slipped into the water with minimal splash. The pool was 40 feet deep, and the target was positioned on the bottom near a collection of obstacles designed to simulate a real underwater environment. As Sarah descended, she felt the familiar pressure building in her ears and the slight burning sensation in her lungs that came with breath-hold diving. She moved with efficient, controlled strokes, conserving her energy and oxygen while navigating toward the target. The practice charge was designed to be attached using a magnetic clamp system, requiring precise hand coordination while managing buoyancy and air consumption. Sarah located the target quickly and began the attachment process, her movements deliberate and practiced despite the need to appear as though she was learning the technique for the first time. Above the surface, Instructor Johnson watched through the observation window, noting her technique with interest. Something about her movements suggested more experience than her file indicated, but he filed the observation away for later consideration. Sarah completed the exercise within the time limit and surfaced smoothly, treading water as she waited for the instructor's assessment. Around the pool, her fellow trainees watched with a mixture of surprise and grudging respect. "Not bad, Mitchell," Instructor Johnson called out. "Your technique needs work, but you showed good composure under pressure." The assessment was deliberately understated, designed to acknowledge her success without drawing undue attention to her skill level. Sarah simply nodded and moved to the back of the group, allowing the next trainee to take position. As the day progressed through various exercises, Sarah continued to walk the fine line between demonstrating competence and avoiding suspicion. She succeeded at most tasks while making sure to struggle appropriately with others, creating the impression of a dedicated trainee who was improving through hard work and determination. By the end of the training day, the attitudes of her fellow trainees had begun to shift slightly. While they still viewed her as someone who might not make it through the full program, they could no longer dismiss her as completely out of her depth. "I'll give you this, Mitchell," Martinez said as they headed back to the barracks. "You've got more fight in you than I expected." Sarah smiled slightly. "I'm just getting started." That evening, as she lay in her bunk reviewing the day's observations for her investigation, Sarah reflected on the challenge of maintaining her cover while gathering the intelligence needed to complete her mission. She was making progress on both fronts, but she knew that the real tests were still ahead of her. The security breach investigation had yielded some preliminary leads, and she was beginning to identify patterns in the information that had been compromised. More importantly, she was starting to earn the grudging respect of her fellow trainees, which would be crucial when the time came to reveal her true identity and take command of the situation. For now, she would continue to endure the comments and challenges, knowing that every day brought her closer to completing her mission and proving that respect in the military was earned through actions, not assumptions. 2 weeks had passed since the underwater demolition training, and the dynamics within Sarah's training group had continued to evolve. The initial hostility had given way to a cautious acceptance, though several trainees still questioned whether she belonged among the elite ranks they were all striving to join. The breaking point came during what the instructors called Hell Week, a grueling 5-day period designed to push every trainee beyond their physical and mental limits. Sleep deprivation, constant physical exertion, and psychological pressure were the tools used to separate those who truly wanted to be SEALs from those who were simply trying to prove something to themselves or others. On the third night of Hell Week, the trainees found themselves on a simulated rescue mission in the rugged hills outside San Diego. They had been operating on less than 4 hours of sleep total since the exercise began, and their mission parameters kept changing every few hours, forcing them to adapt and readapt their strategies under extreme stress. "Listen up," called out Chief Petty Officer Williams, the senior instructor overseeing the exercise. "You have a downed pilot trapped behind enemy lines. Intelligence suggests hostiles are closing in on his position. You have 1 hour to extract him and return to the rally point." Sarah listened carefully to the briefing while studying the terrain map they had been provided. Her trained eye quickly identified several potential approach routes and extraction strategies, but she forced herself to wait for someone else to take the lead rather than revealing the depth of her tactical experience. Martinez stepped forward, assuming the role of team leader as he had done several times during previous exercises. "Okay, we'll split into 2 teams," he announced. "Team Alpha will approach from the north while Team Bravo provides overwatch from the ridgeline." Sarah recognized the plan as tactically sound, but potentially inefficient given the terrain features and timeline constraints. However, she held her tongue, knowing that challenging Martinez's authority too directly would only create unnecessary conflict within the group. As they moved through the darkness toward their objective, the fatigue of the past 3 days began to take its toll on several team members. Rodriguez stumbled repeatedly over the rocky terrain, and Thompson was struggling to maintain the pace required to reach their target on schedule. 30 minutes into the mission, everything went wrong. Martinez, leading Team Alpha through what appeared to be the most direct route to the objective, walked his group directly into a simulated ambush. The role-playing instructors opened fire with blank rounds and simulation equipment, immediately eliminating 3 of the 6-member team. "Team Alpha is compromised," came the radio transmission from Chief Williams. "Team Bravo, you're on your own. Mission parameters unchanged. Extract the pilot within the remaining 30 minutes or the exercise is a failure." Sarah found herself suddenly thrust into a leadership position she had been trying to avoid. With Martinez and most of Team Alpha out of the exercise, the remaining trainees looked to her for guidance, despite their previous doubts about her capabilities. "Rodriguez, take overwatch position on the eastern ridge," she said quietly, her voice carrying a natural authority that surprised even herself. "Thompson, you're with me on the approach. We'll use the drainage ditch to get close without being detected." "Hold on," Thompson protested. "Who put you in charge? Maybe we should wait for new orders from the instructors." "We don't have time to wait," Sarah replied firmly. "The mission clock is still running and that pilot needs extraction. We can either work together and succeed, or we can stand here arguing while the exercise fails." The conviction in her voice, combined with the urgency of the situation, convinced Thompson and Rodriguez to follow her lead. Sarah quickly outlined a revised approach that took advantage of the terrain features Martinez's team had overlooked, using the natural cover provided by the landscape to avoid the areas where hostile forces were likely positioned. As they moved toward the objective, Sarah's tactical instincts took over completely. She guided the team through a series of coordinated movements that demonstrated years of real-world experience in similar situations, though she was careful to present her decisions as educated guesses rather than proven knowledge. "I think the hostiles will be watching the obvious approach routes," she explained as they navigated around a cluster of boulders. "If we stay low and use this creek bed, we should be able to get within 50 meters of the objective without being detected." Her prediction proved accurate. The role-playing instructors had indeed positioned themselves to cover the main approach routes, leaving the more difficult but concealed path relatively unguarded. Sarah's team reached the simulated crash site with 15 minutes remaining on the mission clock. The downed pilot was actually another instructor, Petty Officer First Class Brooks, who had been briefed to make the extraction as challenging as possible. He was positioned in a makeshift shelter that required careful coordination to approach without triggering the proximity sensors that would indicate hostile detection. "How do you want to handle this?" Rodriguez whispered as they observed the objective from concealment. Sarah studied the situation for several moments, her mind automatically calculating fields of fire, approach angles, and extraction routes. "Rodriguez, I need you to create a distraction on the north side of the position," she said. "Nothing dramatic, just enough noise to draw attention in that direction. Thompson and I will approach from the south and extract the pilot." "What if the hostiles don't take the bait?" Thompson asked. "Then we adapt and try something else," Sarah replied, "but we won't know until we try." The plan worked flawlessly. Rodriguez's carefully orchestrated distraction drew the attention of the simulated hostile forces, allowing Sarah and Thompson to reach the pilot's position undetected. The extraction itself required both physical strength and tactical coordination, as they had to move the injured pilot across difficult terrain while avoiding detection. With 5 minutes remaining on the mission clock, Sarah's team successfully reached the rally point with their objective completed. Chief Williams was waiting for them with the expression that mixed surprise with professional approval. "Outstanding work," he announced. "Team Bravo successfully completed the mission within the time parameters. Team Alpha, gather around for after-action review." As Martinez and the other members of his team rejoined the group, there was a noticeable shift in how they looked at Sarah. The casual dismissal and subtle condescension had been replaced by genuine respect and curiosity about her background. "That was some serious tactical thinking," Martinez admitted as they prepared for the next phase of Hell Week. "Where did you learn to read terrain like that?" Sarah deflected the question with a modest shrug. "Just seems like common sense to me. Stay low, use cover. Don't do what the enemy expects you to do." But Chief Williams was watching her more carefully now, and she could see the questions forming in his mind. Her performance during the rescue exercise had revealed skills that were difficult to explain for someone who was supposedly going through basic SEAL training for the first time. The remainder of Hell Week continued to test the limits of every trainee's endurance, but Sarah found herself increasingly looked to for leadership and tactical guidance by her fellow candidates. She tried to balance being helpful with maintaining her cover, but it was becoming more difficult to hide the depth of her experience and training. On the final day of Hell Week, the trainees faced their ultimate challenge: a comprehensive exercise that combined underwater operations, land-based combat simulations, and medical scenarios designed to test their ability to perform under maximum stress. Sarah's team was tasked with infiltrating a simulated enemy facility, gathering intelligence, and extracting with minimal detection. The exercise would require everything they had learned during their training, plus the ability to think creatively when their original plans inevitably went wrong. As they prepared for the mission, Sarah noticed something that made her investigation instincts flare. One of the trainees, Peterson, was carrying communication equipment that didn't match the standard gear issued for the exercise. When she mentioned it casually to Rodriguez, he confirmed her suspicion that Peterson had been seen with unauthorized devices on several previous occasions. The intelligence breach she had been investigating suddenly took on new urgency. If Peterson was somehow transmitting information about their training exercises to unauthorized parties, it could compromise not just the security of the training program, but potentially endanger active SEAL operations in the field. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. As her team began their final exercise, she quietly activated her own concealed communication device and transmitted a coded message to her handler. "Package identified. Request immediate extraction and full reveal authorization." The response came back within minutes. "Extraction authorized. Reveal protocol initiated. Maintain cover until backup arrives." As Sarah led her team through what would be their final training exercise together, she knew that within hours, everything would change. The investigation would be complete, the security threat would be neutralized, and her true identity would finally be revealed. But first, she had a mission to complete and a team to lead to success. The final exercise was reaching its climax when everything changed. Sarah's team had successfully infiltrated the simulated enemy compound and was extracting with their intelligence package when she spotted Peterson making an unauthorized transmission from his concealed position. Without hesitation, Sarah broke from her team's formation and moved to intercept Peterson before he could complete whatever communication he was attempting. Her sudden movement caught the attention of both her teammates and the exercise instructors, who watched in confusion as she tackled Peterson to the ground with professional precision. "What the hell, Mitchell?" Martinez shouted, momentarily forgetting they were supposed to maintain noise discipline during the exercise. Sarah had Peterson pinned with a combat restraint technique that was far beyond anything taught in basic SEAL training. As she secured the unauthorized communication device from his hands, Peterson's resistance made it clear that this was no training accident. "You have no idea what you're doing," Peterson hissed as he struggled against her hold. "Let me go before you ruin everything." "The only thing being ruined here is your operation," Sarah replied, her voice carrying an authority that made everyone within earshot stop what they were doing. Chief Williams approached the situation rapidly, speaking into his radio as he moved. "Exercise control. We have a real-world security incident in progress. Suspend all training activities immediately." Within minutes, the training area was swarming with military police and security personnel who had been positioned nearby as part of Sarah's investigation support network. Peterson was taken into custody while the rest of the trainees stood in stunned confusion, trying to understand how their final training exercise had suddenly become a real military operation. "All trainees report to the assembly area immediately," Chief Williams announced. "This exercise is terminated." As the group gathered in the designated area, Sarah found herself standing slightly apart from her teammates, who were looking at her with a mixture of confusion and growing suspicion. The way she had handled Peterson, combined with her consistent tactical expertise throughout their training, was finally raising the questions she had been hoping to avoid until her mission was complete. Martinez was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. "Mitchell, what just happened back there? And how did you know Peterson was doing something wrong?" Before Sarah could answer, a convoy of vehicles approached their position. The lead vehicle stopped directly in front of the assembly area, and several high-ranking officers emerged, including Admiral Rebecca Stone, the commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare Command. The trainees immediately snapped to attention as Admiral Stone approached, but their confusion only deepened when she walked directly to Sarah and stopped in front of her. "Lieutenant Commander Mitchell," Admiral Stone said formally, "outstanding work on Operation Seawall. Your investigation has successfully identified and neutralized a significant security threat to our training pipeline." The words hit the assembled trainees like a physical blow. Martinez's mouth fell open, and several others took involuntary steps backward as the full implications of what they were hearing sank in. "Lieutenant Commander," Rodriguez whispered, his voice barely audible. Admiral Stone turned to address the group. "Gentlemen, allow me to introduce Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, a decorated Navy SEAL officer with 8 years of active service and 3 combat deployments. For the past 3 months, she has been operating undercover within your training class as part of an investigation into suspected intelligence leaks from this facility." The silence that followed was profound. Every comment, every slight, every moment of condescension they had directed towards Sarah over the past weeks was now viewed through an entirely different lens. The woman they had dismissed as potentially unworthy of joining their ranks was not only already a SEAL, but outranked every one of them by a significant margin. Thompson was the first to speak, his voice shaking slightly. "Ma'am, we had no idea. The things we said—" Sarah stepped forward, her posture and bearing now clearly that of an experienced military officer, rather than a struggling trainee. "At ease, all of you," she said, her voice carrying the natural command presence that she had been carefully suppressing for months. "You were never supposed to know my real identity," she continued. "Your reactions and behavior were exactly what I needed to see in order to investigate the security breaches we suspected were occurring within the training program. Peterson was using his position as a trainee to gather information about our training methods, schedules, and personnel, then transmitting that information to unauthorized contacts." Martinez stepped forward, coming to attention. "Ma'am, I want to apologize for my behavior. I was completely out of line." "Were you?" Sarah asked, raising an eyebrow. "Tell me, Martinez, what exactly did you do wrong?" The question caught him off guard. I questioned your abilities, ma'am. I made assumptions about whether you belonged here." "And how did you reach those conclusions?" Martinez thought for a moment. "Based on your apparent experience level and physical performance during training, which appeared to be consistent with someone going through SEAL training for the first time, correct?" "Yes, ma'am." Sarah nodded. "Then you were making tactical assessments based on observed performance, which is exactly what I would expect from a potential SEAL. The only thing you might have done differently is to focus more on helping a struggling teammate improve rather than writing them off as unworthy." She turned to address the entire group. "Gentlemen, over the past 3 months, I've had the opportunity to observe each of you under extreme stress and challenging conditions. While you initially made assumptions about my capabilities, you also demonstrated the ability to adapt those assessments based on new evidence. More importantly, when the situation required it, you followed effective leadership regardless of its source." Chief Williams stepped forward. "Ma'am, what about the training program? Will these men be able to complete their certification?" "That depends on them," Sarah replied. "The investigation is complete, and Peterson's arrest has eliminated the security threat we were concerned about. Their training can continue, provided they're still committed to earning their place among the SEAL teams." Rodriguez raised his hand tentatively. "Ma'am, can I ask what happens now?" Sarah smiled for the first time since her identity had been revealed. "Now you finish Hell Week. You've still got 12 hours left, and I promise you, they're going to be the longest 12 hours of your lives. The difference is that now you're going to be trained by someone who's actually done the job you're trying to earn the right to do." The realization that their training was about to become significantly more challenging was written clearly on every face in the group, but there was also a new sense of respect and determination. They had been training alongside a real SEAL officer for months, and despite their initial attitudes, she had chosen to continue their development rather than simply washing them out of the program. "One more thing," Sarah added. "Everything that happened during my undercover assignment stays within this group. The success of similar operations in the future depends on maintaining operational security about our methods and capabilities. Is that understood?" "Yes, ma'am," came the unified response. As the group prepared to resume their training under Sarah's now revealed leadership, Martinez approached her privately. "Ma'am, I want you to know that we learned something important here. It's not about whether someone looks like they belong somewhere. It's about whether they can do the job when it matters." "That's exactly right," Sarah replied. "And that lesson applies to every team you'll ever be part of, whether in the military or civilian life. Character and competence can't be determined by appearances or assumptions. They have to be proven through actions." The remainder of Hell Week took on a different character entirely. Sarah's expertise and experience transformed the training from a test of endurance into a masterclass in special operations tactics and leadership. The trainees who had once questioned her presence now competed for her attention and approval, understanding that they were receiving instruction from someone who had successfully executed the types of missions they could only dream of joining. By the time Hell Week concluded, every member of the training class had not only passed their requirements, but had gained a deeper understanding of what it truly meant to be part of an elite military unit. The lessons they learned about leadership, respect, and the danger of making assumptions based on first impressions would stay with them throughout their careers. 6 months later, at the graduation ceremony for their SEAL class, Admiral Stone presented each new operator with their trident insignia. Sarah stood in the front row, now in her dress uniform with her lieutenant commander's rank clearly displayed, as each of her former trainees crossed the stage to receive the symbol that marked them as fully qualified Navy SEALs. When Martinez approached to receive his trident, Admiral Stone paused before pinning it to his uniform. "Tell me, Petty Officer Martinez, what's the most important lesson you learned during your training?" Martinez looked directly at Sarah as he answered. "Ma'am, I learned that respect isn't something you give based on what you think you see. It's something you earn and something you give based on what people actually do when it matters most." Admiral Stone smiled and pinned the trident to his chest. "Outstanding answer, SEAL." As the ceremony concluded and the new SEALs celebrated with their families, Sarah reflected on the successful completion of both her investigation and her unexpected role as an instructor. The security breach had been eliminated, a group of promising young operators had successfully completed their training, and most importantly, valuable lessons had been learned about leadership, respect, and the importance of looking beyond surface appearances. The shower room comments and casual dismissals that had marked the beginning of her undercover assignment now seemed like ancient history. In their place was a genuine respect built on demonstrated competence, proven leadership, and the understanding that in the special operations community, what matters most is not where you come from or what you look like, but what you can accomplish when your teammates are counting on you to succeed.